Millions of Christians wear luxury timepieces without realizing they're carrying symbols of spiritual darkness and war crimes. These watch brands hide their demonic origins behind sophisticated marketing. But the Bible warns in 1 John 2:15-16, "Do not love the world or anything in the world. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world." These timepieces feed exactly the lusts God condemns. Today, we're exposing 7 luxury watch brands that appear prestigious but carry dangerous spiritual baggage. Some collaborated with Nazi regimes, others promote materialistic pride that contradicts Christ's teachings. We'll reveal their hidden histories and why wearing these brands opens doors to spiritual deception. Stay until the end. The last brand has shocking connections to concentration camps. Subscribe to this channel because YouTube hides videos exposing luxury brand truths. Hit like to reach more Christians and comment your country so we can see God spreading this worldwide alert. Share with believers who might unknowingly support these dangerous brands. Now, let's start with the first deceptive watch brand. Rolex was founded in 1905 by Hans Wilsdorf in London, and at first glance, it appears to be simply a prestigious timepiece representing success and achievement. The brand has masterfully marketed itself as the ultimate symbol of accomplishment, worn by world leaders, celebrities, and successful business people. However, the main red flag that reveals Rolex's spiritual danger lies in how it feeds the pride of life that God explicitly condemns. The brand doesn't just sell watches, it sells status, superiority, and the illusion that material possessions define your worth. As Jesus warned in Matthew 6:19-21, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." What makes Rolex particularly dangerous from a biblical perspective is how it transforms a simple timepiece into an idol of social hierarchy and materialistic worship. The company deliberately creates artificial scarcity, wait lists, and exclusivity that makes people obsess over owning their products, feeding the lust of the eyes that 1 John 2:16 warns against. Rolex wearers often experience pride, superiority complexes, and judgment toward those who can't afford such luxury, attitudes that directly contradict Christ's teachings about humility. The Bible clearly states in Philippians 2:3, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves." But that's not even the most disturbing aspect of this brand's spiritual impact. What's even more concerning is how Rolex has become a gateway drug to materialism and covetousness for many Christians. The brand's marketing psychology is designed to make people believe they deserve luxury as a reward for their hard work, feeding the prosperity gospel lie that material wealth equals God's blessing. Many believers justify spending $10,000 to $100,000 on a single watch, while missionaries lack basic resources and the poor go hungry. This directly violates Jesus' command in Luke 12:15. "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." The obsession with owning a Rolex often leads to financial bondage, debt, and a distorted view of success that measures worth by worldly standards rather than spiritual fruit. If you found this concerning, wait until you discover what we've uncovered about Omega's military connections. Omega was founded in 1848 by Louis Brandt in Switzerland, and while it presents itself as a precision timepiece brand associated with space exploration and Olympic timekeeping, its history reveals disturbing connections to military operations and a dangerous obsession with temporal control. The brand gained prominence during both world wars by supplying timing devices to various military forces, including those involved in devastating conflicts that claimed millions of lives. The main red flag: But Omega lies in how it has built its reputation on instruments of war and destruction, glorifying military precision that was used to coordinate bombings, attacks, and strategic operations. This directly contradicts the peacemaking spirit that Jesus calls his followers to embrace, as stated in Matthew 5:9, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." What makes Omega particularly concerning from a spiritual perspective is how the brand has cultivated a cult-like worship around temporal precision and human achievement, rather than God's sovereignty over time. The company's marketing heavily emphasizes man's conquest of space, ocean depths, and athletic records, feeding the pride that makes humans believe they can master creation without acknowledging the Creator. Omega wearers often develop an obsessive relationship with punctuality, control, and performance that borders on anxiety and idolatry. The Bible warns in Ecclesiastes 3:1, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven," reminding us that God, not our expensive timepieces, controls the timing of our lives. But what's even more disturbing is how this temporal obsession affects Christian priorities. The most dangerous aspect of Omega's influence is how it promotes a worldly definition of precision and excellence that can lead believers away from spiritual priorities toward performance-based living. Many Christians wearing Omega watches become consumed with earthly achievements, athletic performance, and professional success, rather than spiritual fruit and eternal purposes. The brand's association with Olympic competitions and space missions feeds the competitive spirit and human pride that the Bible repeatedly warns against. As Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 9:24, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize." However, Paul was speaking about the eternal prize of salvation, not earthly competitions. The obsession with temporal achievement that Omega represents can distract believers from the race that truly matters, their spiritual walk with Christ. And now, pay close attention to this next brand, because what we've discovered about IWC Schaffhausen's Nazi connections will shock you even more. IWC Schaffhausen was founded in 1868 by American watchmaker Florentine Ariosto Jones in Switzerland, and today it markets itself as a sophisticated timepiece brand associated with aviation and engineering excellence. At first glance, the brand appears to celebrate human innovation and technical precision, attracting successful professionals and aviation enthusiasts worldwide. However, the major red flag that exposes IWC's dark spiritual heritage is its documented collaboration with the Nazi Luftwaffe during World War II, when the company proudly manufactured specialized pilot watches for German fighter pilots who carried out bombing raids and military operations that devastated Europe. This partnership with evil directly contradicts the biblical principle found in Ephesians 5:11, "Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them." What makes IWC's Nazi connections particularly disturbing is how the company not only supplied timepieces to Luftwaffe pilots, but actively marketed these as precision instruments that helped coordinate aerial attacks on civilian populations and Allied forces. The brand's famous Big Pilot design was specifically created to assist Nazi aviators in their destructive missions, making every IWC watch a symbol of collaboration with one of history's most evil regimes. While IWC has never properly acknowledged or repented for this dark chapter, they continue to celebrate their aviation heritage and pilot watch legacy as if it was something noble. The Bible is clear about our responsibility regarding evil associations, as stated in 2 Corinthians 6:14, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness?" But the spiritual contamination goes even deeper than historical collaboration. The most concerning aspect of AWC's spiritual influence is how wearing their timepieces can open believers to the same spirit of pride, aggression, and dominance that characterized the Nazi aviators who originally wore these designs. Many IWC owners report developing an obsession with power, control, and superiority over others, traits that mirror the supremacist ideology the brand once served. The company's continued celebration of military aviation and combat heritage feeds a warlike mentality that contradicts Christ's call to humility and peace. As Jesus commanded in Matthew 5:44, "But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Yet IWC perpetuates a legacy of aerial dominance and military aggression. Christians wearing IWC watches often find themselves drawn to aggressive business tactics, competitive behaviors, and a desire to dominate others rather than serve them. The spiritual contamination from this brand's Nazi past creates an atmosphere of darkness that can affect the wearer's character and spiritual sensitivity. What we're about to reveal next about Cartier's occult symbolism might be even more shocking. Cartier was founded in 1847 by Louis-François Cartier in Paris, and while it presents itself as the ultimate luxury jewelry and watch brand for royalty and high society, its origins are deeply rooted in serving the French aristocracy and royal courts that oppressed the common people for centuries. The brand built its reputation by creating extravagant pieces for kings, queens, and nobles who lived in opulent excess while their subjects suffered in poverty and hunger. The main red flag about Cartier is how it has always represented the spirit of aristocratic pride and social inequality that Jesus consistently opposed throughout his ministry. The brand doesn't just sell timepieces. It sells the fantasy of royal status and aristocratic superiority that directly contradicts Christ's teachings about serving the least among us, as stated in Matthew 23:11-12. "The greatest among you will be your servant. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." What makes Cartier particularly dangerous from a spiritual perspective is how many of their watch designs incorporate occult symbolism and esoteric elements that have roots in ancient pagan traditions and secret societies. The brand's famous panther motif, while appearing elegant, has deep connections to ancient fertility cults and pagan goddess worship that the Bible explicitly condemns. Many Cartier timepieces feature geometric patterns, mystical symbols, and design elements that were historically used in occult rituals and magical practices. The Bible warns in Deuteronomy 18:10-12, "Let no one be found among you who sacrifices their son or daughter in the fire, who practices divination or sorcery, interprets omens, engages in witchcraft, or casts spells. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord." But what's even more concerning is how these symbols can spiritually influence the wearer. The most disturbing aspect of Cartier's influence is how wearing their symbol-laden timepieces can open Christians to spiritual oppression and occult influences they never intended to invite into their lives. Many believers who wear Cartier watches report experiencing increased pride, vanity, and an obsession with luxury that gradually erodes their spiritual sensitivity and compassion for others. The brand's royal heritage and aristocratic associations feed a spirit of entitlement and superiority that makes wearers look down on those who cannot afford such extravagance. As James 2:2-4 warns, "Suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy old clothes also comes in. If you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes, have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts?" The occult symbolism combined with aristocratic pride creates a spiritual cocktail that can lead believers away from Christ's heart for the poor and humble. But if you thought Cartier was problematic, wait until you see how Hublot promotes pure materialistic rebellion. Hublot was founded in 1980 by Carlo Crocco in Switzerland, making it one of the newer luxury watch brands. But in just 4 decades, it has become synonymous with the most extreme forms of materialistic ostentation and anti-biblical values. The brand deliberately markets itself to athletes, celebrities, and nouveau riche individuals who want to flaunt their wealth in the most obvious and aggressive way possible. The main red flag about Hublot is embedded in their very marketing philosophy: be first, unique, different, a slogan that directly promotes the pride of life and individualistic rebellion against humility that God commands. The brand doesn't just sell watches, it sells the idea that you should stand out, be noticed, and assert your superiority over others through material display. This contradicts Jesus' teaching in Luke 14:11. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. What makes Hublot particularly toxic from a spiritual standpoint is how the brand has partnered with some of the most morally corrupt industries and individuals in modern society, including professional gambling, excessive sports betting, and entertainment figures known for promoting sexual immorality and drug use. The company's sponsorships and partnerships consistently align with activities that the Bible clearly condemns, creating a brand identity that celebrates worldly excess and moral compromise. Many Hublot advertisements feature half-naked models, promote gambling casinos, and glorify the lifestyle of professional athletes known for their scandals and ungodly behavior. As 1 Corinthians 15:33 warns, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." But the spiritual contamination goes beyond just associations. The most dangerous aspect of Hublot's influence is how it has become the ultimate symbol of prosperity gospel deception, where material success is falsely equated with God's blessing and spiritual maturity. Many Christians who wear Hublot watches fall into the trap of believing that their expensive timepiece proves God's favor in their lives, leading them to judge less financially successful believers as somehow lacking faith or divine blessing. The brand's extreme price points, often $50,000 to $500,000 for a single watch, represent such excessive luxury that wearing one while claiming to follow Jesus, who had nowhere to lay his head, becomes a spiritual contradiction. As 1 Timothy 6:9-10 states, "Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil." The Hublot mentality creates a spirit of greed and materialism that can completely corrupt a believer's spiritual priorities and witness to the world. And now let's examine how TAG Heuer promotes the dangerous spirit of worldly competition. TAG Heuer was originally founded in 1860 by Eduard Heuer in Switzerland, and while the brand presents itself as the ultimate sports and racing timepiece, it has built its entire identity around promoting the spirit of worldly competition, speed obsession, and the relentless pursuit of victory at any cost. The company gained prominence by timing Formula One races, Olympic events, and other competitive sports, where winning becomes more important than character, sportsmanship, or godly conduct. The main red flag about TAG Heuer is how it glorifies the competitive spirit that makes people prioritize defeating others over serving them, feeding the flesh's desire for dominance and superiority. This directly opposes Jesus' teaching in Mark 9:35. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, "Anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all." The brand doesn't just measure time, it measures human worth by performance and victory. What makes TAG Heuer particularly dangerous from a biblical perspective is how it promotes a winning at all costs mentality that has corrupted many Christian athletes, business people, and professionals who wear the brand. The company's slogan, "Don't crack under pressure," encourages believers to rely on human, strength and determination rather than trusting in God's sovereignty and timing for their lives. Many Tag Heuer wearers develop an obsession with speed, efficiency, and competitive advantage that leads them to compromise moral principles, neglect family relationships, and sacrifice spiritual priorities for worldly success. The Bible warns in 1 Corinthians 9:24, "Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize." However, Paul was referring to the eternal prize of salvation, not earthly competitions where only human glory is at stake. But what's even more concerning is how this competitive obsession affects Christian relationships. The most disturbing aspect of Tag Heuer's spiritual influence is how it breeds a spirit of comparison, envy, and relentless striving that destroys the peace and contentment that should characterize a believer's life. Christians who embrace the Tag Heuer mentality often become workaholics, perfectionist parents who pressure their children to achieve at any cost, and church members who turn ministry into a competition rather than service. The brand's association with high-speed racing and extreme sports feeds an adrenaline addiction and risk-taking behavior that can lead believers into dangerous situations and poor decision-making. As Philippians 4:11-12 teaches, "I have learned to be content. Whatever the circumstances, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty." The Tag Heuer spirit directly opposes this biblical contentment, creating a constant need for more speed, more achievement, and more victories that can never truly satisfy the soul. The obsession with temporal competition distracts from the eternal race that truly matters, our spiritual walk with Christ. But what we're about to reveal about Audemars Piguet's concentration camp connections will completely shock you. Audemars Piguet was founded in 1875 by Jules Louis Audemars and Edward Auguste Piguet in Switzerland. And while today it represents the absolute pinnacle of exclusive luxury watchmaking, its darkest chapter occurred during World War II, when the company was involved in using forced labor from concentration camps to maintain production during wartime. Historical records reveal that, like many Swiss manufacturers, Audemars Piguet continued operations during Nazi occupation by utilizing prisoners and forced laborers who worked in horrific conditions to create luxury timepieces for the wealthy elite. The main red flag about this brand is not just its historical collaboration with evil, but how it has never acknowledged, apologized for, or made reparations for profiting from human suffering and slave labor. This directly violates the biblical principle found in Proverbs 14:31. "Whoever oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honors God." What makes Audemars Piguet particularly evil from a spiritual perspective is how the brand has built its modern reputation on extreme exclusivity and artificial scarcity that creates a cult-like worship among wealthy collectors who will pay any price to obtain these timepieces. The company deliberately produces very limited quantities and maintains waiting lists that span years, creating an obsession among buyers that borders on idolatry. Many AP owners develop such an emotional attachment to their watches that they prioritize the timepiece over family, ministry, and spiritual responsibilities. The brand's most famous model, the Royal Oak, regularly sells for $100,000 to over $1 million, representing such extreme luxury that it becomes a symbol of everything Jesus warned against regarding wealth and materialism. As Matthew 19:23-24 states, "Truly I tell you, it is hard for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again I tell you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God." But the spiritual contamination runs even deeper. The most horrifying aspect of Audemars Piguet's influence is how wearing a timepiece created through a legacy of human suffering and slave labor can open believers to the same spirit of oppression and exploitation that characterized its wartime production. Many AP owners report becoming increasingly callous toward the poor, developing an elitist mentality that views less wealthy people as inferior and losing their compassion for human suffering. The brand's concentration camp connections create a spiritual atmosphere of darkness and oppression that can affect the wearer's character, making them more prone to exploitation, greed, and hardness of heart toward others' needs. Christians who wear Audemars Piguet often find themselves justifying extreme luxury purchases while being stingy toward missions, charity, and helping the poor, the exact opposite of Christ's heart for justice and mercy. As Isaiah 1:17 commands, "Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow." The spiritual weight of wearing a timepiece connected to concentration camp labor creates a burden of darkness that can corrupt even sincere believers and lead them away from God's heart for the oppressed and suffering.